Thanks, Scott. That was interesting stuff, and thanks for the kind words, and thanks, Ian, as well. I found your presentation very interesting. So, my name's Dan. I'm from Basemap, as said, and we're going to be here chatting to you about a few case studies on how different NHS trusts and CCGs have been using our software and solutions to help themselves out in their kind of day-to-day problems. So, speaking of day-to-day problems, with our existing customer base and for people we've spoken to before with regards to parking, the same kind of issues keep reoccurring. So car parking is always in the news. There's constantly pressure of hospitals to ensure they have the right number of spaces, for the right type of people. And there's always pressure on them to then introduce ways to manage that, such as a sustainable car park permit system. Also, when we chat to customers a lot and they see the hospital in the news, Joe Bloggs missed his appointment because he couldn't get a car parking space. There's something in the news the other week about someone dropped off an elderly relative but couldn't get a car parking space for half an hour. All these things are really, really bad things and can bring up a lot of emotions as well. And as we've seen with our customers, that parking can be very emotive. People have got their own view and everyone thinks they should have a car parking space themselves. You always hear the complaints as well, both from staff and from patients, that there's never ever enough spaces for them, and all this ties into that everyone thinks it's their right sometimes to have a car parking space. Well, the reality is some people might live very close by and therefore could travel in by different means, different modes. They could walk in, they could cycle in, they could even get the bus in. And overall, everyone is pretty much in agreement that any type of system that is implemented needs to be a fair system and needs to monitor the system as well. And every time we start speaking about kind of car parking and changing their modes of transport to travel in, active travel comes up. So people are always very keen to promote active travel, to get people out of their car onto a bicycle or to walk into a site. And the great thing about this helps them promote staff health, get people fitter by walking and cycling to work, and their mental well-being as well. And there's lots of studies that back that up. Also, when promoting cycling, you can also look at the cycle to work schemes, where you can share the cost of purchasing a bicycle, or looking at car share schemes as well, and also allowing any kind of income that might come in from a car park permit or car parking to be used for sustainability, to look at the provision of cycle racks or showers for people who do cycle in. Also, I think it's very important to communicate the benefits of walking and cycling as well. It's very easy saying that from here, but I think it's very good to kind of show that and tell people that actually if you do this, you can save money potentially. Also, people don't actually know a lot of time about different public transport options. I go back to when I went to Kingston Hospital last week, and I went on the website to find out how I could commute there via public transport. It gave me a list of services and stops, but I then had to go elsewhere out of that site to work out where do I get that service, how much is it going to cost, how long is it going to take me. And that feeds into collaboration with other local transport partnerships or companies. So in Cambridge, there's a thing going on, it's a cross-working policy where they're looking at improving access not just to the hospital, but to the university and to many other sites, working with the council and bus operators. And all of this feeds into the overarching target of reducing carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. And if you look at the makeup of emissions, travel is actually quite a high proportion of that. So in a particular example we're going to be talking about today with Oxford Health, they had all of their kind of issues we spoke about previously. So they had a real need to introduce a sustainable car parking permit system. And the reason for that is they're basically running out of car parking spaces, or they had run out of car parking spaces. So the issue is here, as the business grows, as people get older and they start offering more services, they're needing to pull staff in from further afield. So you have people travelling into Oxford or Oxford sites from places like Milton Keynes or down from Southampton. And the problem is everyone would then, struggle to park anywhere, so people start parking in emergency access or red route locations, which provided their own health and safety issues. They also had an overarching need to increase active travel and to reduce congestion around the hospital. You never want an emergency service vehicle to turn up and not be able to access the site because people are parked on red routes, and they wanted to stop that happening. And also they could see what the benefit would be in active travel and what the correlation would be with the reduction in congestion. So they decided that they needed to have a new car parking management system, and that overall had to be fair for all members of staff. and that to be available for all of their sites, and over 100 different individual sites in total. When looking at it, they found out that actually a straight line approach was not accurate enough. And they thought it was very important to look at travel times and to consider different variables such as time of day and things like footpaths. So what they did is, they looked at the traditional methods. So the straight line distances we can see here going to a particular location in Southampton. And here we can see using the straight line method, there's 42,290 people within that 1 mile catchment. But however, when you look in that map in more detail, you can see the river Itchen. That's a natural barrier that in this type of map is allowing people to act like Jesus and to walk across the water. And this is where we at Basemap and with our TRACC software, this is where we differ. So TRACC effectively allows you then to start bringing in different types of data sets to supplement that type of map. So you can bring in public transport data, produce a travel time catchment for that, car, cycle and walking data as well, giving you very, very accurate multimodal travel times. Where we really kind of are set apart is it allows you to adjust the transportation network as well. So you can add new roads or exclude roads where required, and you can see the routes that are undertaken. So in the bottom left, we've got a map showing 10, 20 and 30-minute walking to a site, and different colours you can see there, the green, pink, orange and purple, is effectively showing different walking routes. So you can then put new links in or remove links to work out how people's paths might change. So looking at the purple option there, it might make more sense to do a little bridge over the river to produce that little journey. And you can do the same for public transport as well. So if you want to remove a bus service or add a bus service in, you can decide and model that within TRACC. The outputs, they vary out of the software. So this is the things that are useful to then show to your business. Predominantly, a travel time contour map like that on the left is produced, but we can produce things such as CSV files that can show you the exact journey that was used, or we can show you a matrix showing here's the postcode, these are the different sites, and these are the journey times. We can also produce catchment maps. So on the right-hand side, we've got a series of dots that are coloured in. These are coloured in based on which hospital, which site is the closest for that person to get to. So if anyone needs to go to a hospital site for an outpatient centre, that's the best one to recommend to them based on travel time. And all this type of analysis can be underpinned with detailed demographic data, either from the census or data held elsewhere. So when you start bringing this into our TRACC software package, you can start really getting some intelligence on the outputs. So what we can see here is the blue area is showing what a mile actually looks like, what that mile looks like when you're using the underlying road network. So we can see a lot of the area is no longer covered. We can then see the natural barrier of the River Itchen coming into play. So we can see effectively that 1 mile distance is being cut off almost at the centre because of the River Itchen. And that's then represented by the drop in the population. So we've gone down to 15,500 people, which is just over a third of the total amount of people that are originally within that 1 mile catchment. So then what we can do is we can do the what if scenario. So what if we wanted to put a new footbridge across the river? What does a mile now look like? That's effectively what we can see here. We can see the mile distance then going across the other side of the river. And then we can then see that then contains an extra few thousand people able to do that journey. So then we started looking at using these type of scenarios in with Oxford Health. The very first thing they came across and they realised they needed to look at was to work out what the cut-off time should be for the car parking permits. So they thought very important to be fair to go to the union and let the union decide what their cut-off time should be. And they came back and said, right, we're looking at a 25-minute walk or a 25-minute cycle or a 45-minute commute via public transport. And the important thing here is looking at public transport in both directions. So not only getting to the site, but getting home from the site at the end of a shift pattern as well. And the software is very adept at being able to do that. And all of this would then allow them that if it took someone 40 minutes in both directions to get the bus into work, for example, then they wouldn't potentially be allowed to drive and get a car parking permit off the back of that. What they then decided to do is, it was a bit short-sighted just to look at existing staff. So they looked at every postcode they could within a 2-hour buffer of the outskirts of their 130 odd sites. This then allows them to future-proof the system. So as a new staff member comes in, they can then see exactly if they're valid for a car parking permit or not. And these results were output into a large CSV file that were powered off an existing HR system. So staff could go in and see were they able to get a car parking permit or not. And I think it's important to stress here, that actually travel time was not the only element that dictated if they got a permit or not. So there was other things at play, such as is that staff member need to go between different sites or see patients at their homes, and that could override the kind of travel time decision. The great thing is the system went live and straight away they could see an increase in active travel. They could see more people using alternative modes to get to their sites. And that was visible, first of all, because of the reduction in congestion. People weren't parking on the red routes anymore. There was less cars parked out on the streets around the kind of the sites. And the car park didn't have people parking all over the place. Really positive stuff. They also then looked at it and then found out that actually, because of the TRACC software, if someone didn't believe the results they were getting out, they had a robust evidence base. So they could say, well, actually, you can walk to in 20 minutes, and if required, they could show them the walking route, or they could show them what bus they needed to get to do that travel into work. So then they produced outputs that kind of look, this is an example of a different location, but it kind of gives you an idea. So on the left-hand side, we have a staff member's postcode. And then what we do off the back of that is we have the data, so we can see what their cycle time to get to a place of work is, what their walk time is, and a distance in meters as well. And then we get a public transport journey in both directions. So I can see that the first postcode, SO15 2NU, they've got a 13-minute journey on the bus home at the end of the day, but a 14.5-minute journey at the beginning of the day. And all of this would then feed into the HR system, giving a vast amounts of information that they could then provide to any customer or a patient if required. There are visual rules we can do, so I would love to, when I went to Kingston Hospital, to see something like this. And this is a walking map around from the site. So here we can see 5-minute walking bands away from John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, and we've got 3 different points representing the different walking or site entrances for that. We can then see where you've got your darker colours representing a longer journey. We can see some nestled in closer to the hospital because there's poor walking access due to people living in housing estates and so on. A similar study in a different sector showed that actually by producing these sort of walking maps, you could look to expect about a 27% increase in modal shifts, so getting people out of their cars into sustainable transport modes, getting them walking to sites, because lots of the time people don't know how long or how short that walk is. What you can also do as well is produce a map that can show every postcode. So here we can see postcodes of staff members in and around Oxford, showing journey times to John Radcliffe. Again, the dots that are green can do that journey within 45 minutes or less, and the ones in red take longer than 45 minutes. And what's interesting here is you look at Abingdon to the south of the map, you can see there's a little area of green where people can get there, but there's little red areas where people might be very close, just outside of that catchment. And therefore doing a few little tweaks to the network might enable that green zone to expand out further. Or you might see I've got a fair few staff members living in Bicester. Look at different options we can do in Bicester to help get people into the John Radcliffe area much quicker. And also is very, very, very positive, and that's kind of shown by the lovely testimonial we've got here from Tanya. I'll let you have a quick read through of that. But the great thing is here, they can see that straight away that the increase in people changing their travel behaviour. That's a really positive thing for us. We've got lots of these maps and much more detailed information on a case study on our website, and you can see the link at the bottom here. So what we can also see as well is with our existing customers, we asked them how else do they use TRACC, and we've got a few different examples here. I'll just cherry pick a few out at the moment. One thing that's becoming more and more obvious is looking at bus subsidies. So in a lot of examples, a hospital will subsidise a number of bus routes to try and help improve surface access for it. And actually you can look at that across your kind of campus, across your site, and say, well, actually, are we getting the best bang for our buck here? You can start editing that data and work out what might work best or what isn't working as well. On the public transport side of things, there's forever cuts going on in councils where they're cutting bus routes. You can see what that knock-on effect might be for yourselves about not only staff getting onto an NHS site, but also passengers and going to outpatient centres as well. And the more positive news, in some instances, if you're very lucky, you're able to build a new site. And if in that example, you want to make sure you're going into the right location. And you can look at planning, not only where that location should be, but what improvements need to be made to the cycle network or the walking network or the public transport network off the back of that. And cars, very important still. While we're trying to promote people getting to the site elsewhere, you can model car access. We've got a product called TM Speeds that allows you to do that. And if you use a nighttime speed, it's very close to a representation of blue light travel times. And we'll come back to that in a moment. As you can see as well, you can look at the catchment areas of hospitals. And also importantly, you can look at the commissioning of new health services. So if you want to put a new stroke centre somewhere, you can work out where it's best located based on population using things such as census data. An example of that is using a slightly different case study. This is some work that was done down in Somerset. And what happened here is they wanted to close Yeovil Hospital. Yeovil Hospital being right in the centre of the map at the moment. So what they did is they decided at Somerset that actually NHS England were making a bad judgment call here. So they wanted to produce an evidence base where they could go up and say, actually, we don't think that is a good idea. So they produced lots of maps and lots of analysis to help them out with that. And one of them was to show a blue light travel time. So here we can see blue light travel time across Somerset and the surrounding areas, and Yeovil being very nice, lots of yellow colours representing shorter journey times. What we can then see is what happens if you close Yeovil Hospital. So Yeovil is a place, it's got quite a high population, and we can see from travel times started of 10 to 20 minutes, you can see a much larger area now being covered by the cold blues and the green colours representing very long journey times. And they then overlaid where actually strokes had occurred and managed to overturn that decision. And this was a great story for me personally, because you'll see at the top in the street, my uncle lives there, and he had a stroke about 6 months after the decision was overturned. Luckily, he was okay because he was taken to Yeovil Hospital, but it does make me think if that hospital had been closed down, it might have been a different output. So to kind of summarise the software, it's meant to be a very, very easy to use application. It's a desktop application that you have full control over. There's no sharing of information with any third party or anything like that. And it's very flexible, so you can view and load your own different data sets into that system, and you can just view bus timetables or view what kind of services are running in the area. Then you can start looking at, okay, what happens if we start removing, we're adding different hospitals or sites, so you can then start influencing if that is a good or bad idea. You can also produce your own maps to help assist with the pressure on parking, give different information to staff and to patients to try and get them to travel to site in a different manner. And you can also therefore encourage active travel as well very easily off the back of that. I think what's really important here as well, which I have lots of customers at the moment who use the system, but they do it through consultants. By doing it internally or in-house, you can control the cost of data or the cost of queries as well, so there's no need to outsource that, and you can build knowledge internally off the back of that as well. We've got lots of really great case studies on our website and lots of other great information as well that might be of use to you. I'd please suggest having a look. If you want to get in contact with some kind of details here. So no, thank you very much for your time.